In America in 1939, there was a 10-year-old black shoe shine boy, who stood in front of the bank to beat the rich white men in expensive suits. While polishing their shoes, the white people will inadvertently talk to each other about the secrets of the financial industry, and the younger boy always remembers these things, waiting for the white people to throw the tip and leave. He immediately wrote it down in his notebook. What this 10-year-old black boy wants is not this petty bit of money, it's knowledge, which is more valuable than gold and silver, financial knowledge. Not only that, he even hid in the bank window and eavesdropped on the meeting of the people inside. This is his ideal since childhood. He wants to be a financial expert. This is a real story, and the main character of the story is Bernard Garrett. In the 50s of the last century, under the financial situation of the whole United States, all are controlled by white people. But Bernard bought 2 banks and sold real estate and owned 177 houses. From a shoe shine boy to a real estate tycoon, the career development of this legendary black guy must be said to have started at the age of 25. That's when Bernard made his first big money. He bought a house, got married and had children, then moved to a big city to develop. One day while searching for a house, he discovered the rental area for black people was packed with people. But the white area still has a lot of empty houses. They'd rather leave it empty or rent it out to black people. Black people have a need to rent a house but do not have a house to rent. Bernard immediately recognized this as a great money-making opportunity. He wants to sell real estate. Initially, Bernard landed on a potential home. He recognized one of its positional advantages. It's near where the black people live. He immediately found a real estate director, and wanted to use his entire fortune of $30,000 to buy the house. That was 1954. The price that Bernard offered was too low, compared to the market price at that time. Such heavy loss trades. Of course the other director disagrees. Bernard said he could understand. Before leaving, he suddenly saw the director's calendar. It's a calendar that a bank gives to its VIP customers. He immediately came up with a plan. Bernard went to that bank and found their director, then used the name of the real estate director to borrow money. That night he sat waiting for the phone from the bank, but the caller was a real estate manager. He questioned Bernard why use his name to borrow from the bank. Is that in compliance with the regulations? Bernard's straight answer is not appropriate. The director said it was right. So tomorrow, go to the bank to sign a loan contract. Bernard was dumbfounded after hearing this, then asked him why he wants to help me. The director said, if you follow the rules, you can't do big business. And so, after getting a loan from the bank, Bernard bought the house. To save money, he immediately found friends and relatives to come and repair the house together. A white auntie saw them and cursed, why are there black people in the white area? Bernard then said that he bought this house. She thought it was an insult and left the next day. The house was quickly repaired and those black people with money immediately came to rent. Only a few days later it was full. As expected, Bernard's first goal judgment was correct. The real estate director also admires him greatly, and invite him to invest in real estate with him. Profits are divided equally, but because Bernard is black, so when signing contracts, the director will be the one to show up. Bernard agrees, and so the two of them collaborated. They are growing more and more prosperous, buy back houses, repair and rent them out at high prices. It wasn't long before Bernard was making a fortune, and he even bought his wife a big house. But all good things don't last long. When the director suddenly passed away, the wife inherits the property. She is a person who is extremely discriminating against black people, so she used a very low price to buy back 50% of the shares of Bernard. Otherwise they will meet in court. After all, the real estate sales contracts were signed by her husband. Under that situation, Bernard could only find the bank's loan appraisal director to testify that he and the real estate director were two partners. Who would have thought that? He turned around. Bernard knows that all this is due to the color of his skin. He left the bank indignantly, but right now, he suddenly had a daring idea. Looking at the bank with all the white people around, a genius idea popped into Bernard's head. He wants to buy this whole bank, under the wife's recommendation. Bernard knows Joe, the richest black man here, and convince him to join. He immediately recognized Bernard's intentions. What you want is the feeling of winning the white man's banks, especially in their territory, right? The two of them understood the meaning and smiled, but want to buy back the bank. The first obstacle is their skin color. White people definitely won't sell to them. This very Bernard soon had a plan. He's looking for a white guy named Matt to come out on their behalf. Special times need special tricks. In order for his friend Matt to have the qualities of a financier, Bernard and Joe immediately train Matt. The first is golf, the sport of the rich. Learn about real estate with financial knowledge. Enjoy the taste of the mountain and the delicious wine. Wearing tailor-made suits. After a month of practice, Matt has completely transformed into a person with a true rich man's temperament. Under the arrangement of two black bosses, Matt and the banker met by chance in a golf club. After a few times of rubbing, the two gradually became familiar. One day when the time came, Matt officially proposed to the other boss about buying the bank building. At first he demanded $2,400,000, but based on the persuasion that Bernard taught earlier, plus the numbers and current market situation, they reduced the price to $1,560,000 and so the building was bought by them. The next day when Bernard and Joe entered the building, the director who always scorned black people gaped in astonishment. Times have changed. Black people can be bank CEOs, but Bernard's ambitions don't stop there. With a loan bank behind him, he bought more houses than repaired and rented them out to black people and made a lot of money, and gradually built his and Joe's own real estate empire. They own 177 houses. Even U.S. Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson came to visit his bank. Bernard even made the front page of the newspaper and suddenly became famous. Not long after that, Bernard took his wife back to his hometown to visit his family. The father that year did not agree for him to follow the real estate career, now told him one sentence, "Son, I'm proud of you." Father and son looking at each other and smiling. One day Bernard took his son for a walk. He didn't expect it to be so many years, but his hometown hasn't changed at all, especially the racism, still deeply rooted in the hearts of the people here. Even the drinking machine also separates black people and dedicated white people. Father and son are walking and coming to the door of a bank. There's a black boy shining his shoes here. Seeing the boy Bernard is like seeing a picture of himself that year. While lamenting, he suddenly had a thought. Now that he has the ability and money, why not help his fellow citizens, so that his fellow blacks could also borrow money from the bank? Bernard decided to buy the bank in his hometown. He looked for Joe to negotiate, but he didn't expect that this time Joe was extremely serious and worried, because Texas, Bernard's hometown, is the most racist place in America. Black people can't even talk about buying a bank or even going to the bank to work. This is not a business problem anymore. This is clearly a social act, but Bernard decided, Joe had to say if it continues like this, something will happen sooner or later, but he still decided to invest for nothing else but to encourage his friend to do the right thing. The bank acquisition was quickly negotiated. By the time they signed the contract, Matt needs to be present. Joe put on his driving suit and followed Matt to the bank, but Bernard refused, so he stayed in the car and observed with binoculars. Suddenly, a police car came. Bernard hastily put on his driver's hat to escape police harassment. Wait until Matt and Joe sign the contract. When they got in the car, he said, "Don't ask." Then they bought another bank. On the surface Matt is the boss of these two banks, but in fact, the cleaning man Bernard and the old man driving Joe are the boss. They used their status as workers to run their two banks and start lending money to black people so they could start a business and buy a house. The bank's loan manager quickly discovered something unusual, because at that time in Texas there was never a bank that gave money to black people. He quietly followed Matt and discovered the big boss behind Matt turned out to be two black people. So Matt has always worked for two black bosses. The director feels this is a great shame. He immediately informed the money management department about the bank's illegal lending. The next day, the investigator immediately came to investigate the bank's documents and indeed investigated 4 illegal loans. Bernard and Joe couldn't believe their eyes. Every loan is thoroughly appraised by them, so there can be no illegal loan. Under their interrogation, Matt finally revealed the truth that he had hired a lawyer recommended by the bank's loan manager. Now it seems that this lawyer was playing tricks on those loan contracts to harm them. Bernard and Joe were extremely angry, but there was nothing that could be done. Matt knew he had made a big mistake, so he transferred these illegal loans to another bank. He originally wanted to make up for it, but he didn't expect it to become a fraud collusion, and so both banks were sealed. Bernard and Joe were also prosecuted. In court Bernard said indignantly, "The hearing, today, looks like a show of bank fraud, but I think actually it was to see how 2 black men bought 2 banks in Texas." The people at the scene were also stunned. The judge also warned Bernard to be careful with his words, but Bernard didn't stop. He criticized the Declaration of Independence as just a blank sheet of paper. In fact, black people did not receive fair treatment. When they go to the bank, they have to wear work clothes and they can't even get a loan. Why do you take certain races out of the American dream? Finally, Bernard and Joe were found guilty of misappropriating bank capital and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Their real estate, except for the house in Bernard's wife's name, the remaining 176 units were confiscated, but no one knew that before the attack. Bernard quietly asked Matt to buy 2 houses in Bahama. 3 years later Bernard and Joe were released from prison. Based on these 2 houses, they began to make a career in Bahamas again. Then they moved back to the US and continued to buy houses in the white area, then remodeled and leased it to black people and became important figures in the protest against the racial isolation regime. Under their influence, in 1968 the U.S. Congress passed the Fair Bill in the Sale and Purchase of Real Estate. that prohibited racial discrimination in the process of buying, selling and renting real estate. Respect and equality is always expensive. Two outstanding Negroes used their money in exchange for fair treatment of their fellow citizens. It also leads us to believe that, in the world, there are still people who are pioneers for the benefit of others, but they do not stop working.